Understanding the Psychology of Romantic Love by Robert A. Johnson. This book starts off with a note on the sources and translation of the myth. It's pretty short, only about a page and a half. I'm not going to read it. I will read a note for women that follows that. Women will find in the story of Tristan and Iseult a vivid symbolic picture of the huge forces at work in all of us, both men and women, when we are caught up in the experience of romantic love. The myth not only records the dynamics of romantic love in the male psyche, it also reflects the fate of the feminine in our culture. It shows how the feminine values of feeling, relatedness, and soul consciousness have been virtually driven out of our culture by our patriarchal mentality. One of the most important insights in the myth for women is the degree to which most men unconsciously search for their lost feminine side, for the feminine values in life, and attempt to find their unlived feminine side through women. But it is not only men who have accepted the patriarchal version of reality. Women have also been taught to idealize masculine values at the expense of the feminine side of life. Most women have spent their lives in a constant feeling of inferiority because they felt that to be feminine was, quote, second best. Women have been trained that only masculine activities, thinking, power, and achieving have any real value. Thus, Western woman finds herself in the same psychological dilemma as Western man, developing a one-sided, competitive mastery of the masculine qualities at the expense of her feminine side. Although this mythical evocation of romantic love is told from a man's standpoint and seen through a man's eyes, women will find much of their own experience in it. But a woman should bear in mind that the myth does not always necessarily reflect a woman's psychological or a woman's special way of experiencing romantic love. There are women's myths, such as Eros and Psyche, for which see my book She, that present a more exact picture of woman's inner structure. The psychological makeups of men and women are distinct. If we tried fully to explain a woman's psychology through a man's myth, it would inevitably give a distorted view of her structure. This is especially true in romantic love, for a woman's feeling side develops differently than a man's, and her experience of relationship has subtle nuances that men do not experience in the same way. Most women spend a tremendous part of their energy in efforts to make a loving relationship with a man and to deal with his seemingly incomprehensible feelings, ideas, and reactions. By making her own journey with Tristan and Iseult, she will understand better the Tristan in her life and how to draw out the best in him. But also, and of equal importance, she will have a clear view of her own unknown self. Introduction. Romantic love is the single greatest energy system in the Western psyche. In our culture, it has supplanted religion as the arena in which men and women seek meaning, transcendence, wholeness, and ecstasy. As a mass phenomenon, romantic love is peculiar in the West. We are so accustomed to living with the beliefs and assumptions of romantic love that we think it is the only form of love on which marriage or love relationships can be based. We think it is the only true love. But there is much that we can learn from the East about this. In Eastern cultures, like those of India or Japan, we find that married couples love each other with great warmth, often with a stability and devotion that puts us to shame. But love is not, quote, romantic love. Their love is not, quote, romantic love as we know it. They don't impose the same ideals on their relationships, nor do they impose such impossible demands and expectations on each other as we do. Romantic love is not just a form of love, it is a whole psychological package, a combination of beliefs, ideals, attitudes, and expectations. These often contradictory ideas coexist in our unconscious minds and dominate our reactions and behavior without our being aware of them. We have automatic assumptions about what a relationship with another person is, what we should feel, and what we should, quote, get out of it. For romantic love does not just mean loving someone, it means being in love. This is a psychological phenomenon that is very specific. When we are, quote, in love, we believe we have found the ultimate meaning of life, revealed in another human being. We feel we are finally completed, that we have found the missing parts of ourselves. Life suddenly seems to have a wholeness, a superhuman intensity that lifts us high above the ordinary plane of existence. For us, these are the sure signs of, quote, true love. The psychological package includes an unconscious demand that our lover or spouse always provides us with this feeling of ecstasy and intensity. With typical Western self-righteousness, we assume that our notion of love, romantic love, must be the best. We assume that any other kind of love between couples would be cold and insignificant by comparison. But if we Westerners are honest with ourselves, we have to admit that our approach to romantic love is not working well. Despite our ecstasy when we are, quote, in love, we spend much of our time with a deep sense of loneliness, alienation, and frustration over our inability to make genuinely loving and committed relationships. Usually we blame other people for failing us. It does not occur to us that perhaps it is we who need to change our own unconscious attitudes, the expectations and demands we impose on our relationships and on other people. This is the great wound in the Western psyche. It is the primary psychological problem of the Western culture. Carl Jung said that if we find the psychic wound in an individual or a people, there you also find their path to consciousness. For it is in the healing of our psychic wounds that we come to know ourselves. Romantic love, if we truly undertake the task of understanding it, becomes such a path to consciousness. If Westerners will free themselves from their automatic servitude to their unconscious assumptions and expectations, they will not only find a new awareness in their relationships, but a new awareness of themselves, their own selves. Romantic love has existed throughout history in many cultures. We find it in the literature of ancient Greece, the Roman Empire, ancient Persia, and feudal Japan. But our modern Western society is the only culture in history that has experienced romantic love as a mass phenomenon. We are the only society that makes romance the basis of our marriage and love relationships and the cultural ideal of, quote, true love. The ideal of romantic love burst into Western society during the Middle Ages. It first appeared in our literature in the myth of Tristan and Iseult, then in the love poems and songs of the troubadours. It was called, quote, courtly love. Its model was the brave knight who worshipped a fair lady as his inspiration, the symbol of all beauty and perfection, the ideal that moved him to be noble, spiritual, refined, and high-minded. In our time, we have mixed courtly love into our sexual relationships and marriages, but we still hold the medieval belief that true love has to be the ecstatic adoration of a man or woman who carries for us the image of perfection. Carl Jung has shown us that when a great psychological phenomenon suddenly appears in the life of an individual, it represents a tremendous unconscious potential that is rising to the level of consciousness. The same is true for our culture. At a certain point in the history of a people, A new possibility bursts out of the collective unconscious. It is a new idea, a new belief, a new value, or a new way of looking at the universe. It represents a potential good if it can be integrated into consciousness, but at first it is overwhelming, even destructive. Romantic love is one of these truly overwhelming psychological phenomena that have appeared in Western history. It has overwhelmed our collective psyche and permanently altered our view of the world. As a society, we have not yet learned to handle the tremendous power of romantic love. We turn it into tragedy and alienation more often than into enduring human relationships. But I believe if men and women will understand the psychological dynamics behind romantic love and learn to handle themselves and learn to handle them consciously, they will find a new possibility of relationship, both to themselves and to others. I'm going to read that sentence again. But I believe if men and women will understand the psychological dynamics behind romantic love and learn to handle them consciously, they will find a new possibility of relationship, both to themselves and to others. Our vehicle for exploring romantic love is the myth of Tristan and Iseult. It is one of the most moving, beautiful, and tragic of all epic tales. It was the first story in Western literature that dealt with romantic love. It is the source from which all our romantic literature has sprung, from Romeo and Juliet down to the love story in the movie at the local cinema. By applying the principles of Jungian psychology, we will interpret the symbols in the myth and learn what it has to teach us about the origins, the nature, and the meaning of romantic love. The myth of Tristan and Iseult, like that of Parsifal, is, quote, a man's myth. It portrays the life of young Tristan, who grows into a noble and selfless hero and then meets the overwhelming experience of his life in his passion for Queen Iseult. It is a symbolic tapestry picturing vividly the development of an individual male consciousness as he struggles to win his masculinity, to become conscious of his feminine side, and to deal with love and relatedness. It shows a man torn among the conflicting forces and loyalties that rage within the male psyche when he is consumed by the joys, the passions, and the sufferings of romance. Nevertheless, there is much in this myth that is of great value and interest to women, for Tristan reveals also those universal dynamics of romantic love that are common to both men and women. Please see a note for women. To look at this myth, to experience it as a rich evocation of the Western psyche's journey, will help a woman not only to better understand a man in her life, but to see more clearly the mysterious forces at work within her own self. For both men and women, to look honestly at romantic love is a heroic journey. It forces us to look not only at the beauty and potential in romantic love, but also at the contradictions and illusions we carry around inside us at the unconscious level. Heroic journeys always lead through dark valleys and difficult confrontations, but if we persevere, we find a new possibility of consciousness. On myths. My lords, if you would hear a high tale of love and of death, here is that of Tristan and Queen Iseult, how to their full joy, but to their sorrow also, they loved each other, and how at last they died of that love together upon one day, she by him and he by her. Thus begins the marvelous story of Tristan and Iseult. It was with these words that the traveling poets and minstrels of the Middle Ages would call together the lords and ladies, the knights and common folk, to hear a wondrous story of adventure and love. They would gather before the wood fire in the great hall of a castle or manor and relive together the high tale of the knight Tristan and his fatal love for Queen Iseult. This story is one of the great myths of all time. It has the dignity and power of Gilgamesh, Beowulf, or the Icelandic sagas. Such myths have an uncanny power to thrill us, uplift us, pull us out of the pettiness of our ego lives, and transport us to a realm of magic, noble deeds, and unearthly passion. But a myth does more than that. If we learn to listen, it also gives us specific psychological information and teaches the deep truths of the psyche. Years ago, a grammar school teacher asked her class, "What is a myth?" A young boy, the son of a couple whom I know well, raised his hand and replied, "A myth is something that is true on the inside but not true on the outside." The teacher did not understand, but often children have more psychological wisdom than adults. A myth is true. It is not true in the outer physical sense, but it is an accurate expression of a psychological situation, of the inner condition of the psyche. Myths are like dreams. Dreams are the messengers of the unconscious mind. Through them, the unconscious communicates its contents and its concerns to the conscious mind. By learning the symbolic language of dreams, a person learns to see what is going on within at an unconscious level and even discovers what needs to be done about it. Jung demonstrated that myths are also symbolic expressions of the unconscious. But though a dream expresses the dynamics within an individual, a myth expresses the dynamics within the collective mind of a society, culture, or race. A myth is the collective dream of an entire people at a certain point in their history. It is as though the entire population dreamed together, and that dream, the myth, bursts forth through its poetry, songs, and stories. But a myth not only lives in literature and imagination, it immediately finds its way into the behavior and attitudes of the culture, into the practical daily lives of the people. The myth of Tristan and Iseult is a profound expression of the Western psyche. It tells us a lot about what makes us tick. It is a vivid panoramic view of the psychological forces at work in the unconscious of Western people for the last 1,000 years of our history. Above all, this myth gives us a painfully accurate picture of romantic love, why it came into our culture, what it is, and why it isn't working very well. Our myths show us that romantic love is a necessary ingredient in the evolution of the Western psyche. We will achieve wholeness and will move on to the next step in our evolution of consciousness only when we learn to live consciously with romantic love. That is, with the vast psychological forces that it represents. In the evolution of consciousness, our greatest problem is always our richest opportunity. Zen teaches that inner growth always involves an experience of a, quote, red-hot coal stuck in the throat. In our development, we always come to a problem, an obstacle, that goes so deep that we, quote, can't swallow it and can't cough it up. This exactly fits our Western experience of romantic love. We can't live with it, and we can't live without it. We can't swallow it, and we can't cough it up. This hot coal in our throats alerts us that a tremendous evolutional potential is trying to manifest itself. After many years of living in the rich world of the psyche and learning its laws, Carl Jung saw a vast evolutional power at work in the psychic universe. He saw that the human psyche strives always towards wholeness, strives to complete itself and become more conscious. The unconscious mind seeks to move its contents up to the level of consciousness, where they can be actualized and assimilated into a more complete conscious personality. Each person's psyche has an inborn evolutional urge to grow, to integrate the contents of the unconscious, to bring together all the missing parts of the total individual into a complete, whole, and conscious self. Jung teaches us that the unconscious is the source, the primal matter from which our conscious minds and ego personalities have evolved. All the values, ideas, feelings, capacities, and attitudes that we have developed into functioning parts of our conscious personalities originated in the raw, primal material of the unconscious. To get a clear image of this, we may picture a coral island that gradually rises out of the sea. The ocean slowly creates this island out of its own matter and pushes it finally above the water into the sunlight. After centuries, topsoil and plant life develop, animals and people appear, and the little island becomes a tiny center of human life and consciousness. Like the vast ocean, the collective unconscious gives birth to a tiny island. It is the conscious psyche, the ego, the I, the part of me that is aware of itself. This little ego mind, surrounded by the vastness of the unconscious, has a high and noble task, a special destiny to live out. Its role in this evolution is to integrate more and more of the unconscious until the conscious mind truly reflects the wholeness of the self. All humankind is in the grip of this huge evolutional power. When the collective unconscious begins a new stage in this process, it tolerates no obstacle. In order to force a new ideal or possibility into the conscious psyche of a people, it will turn a society upside down, launch crusades, beget new religions, or shake empires down into rubble. This vision of psychic evolution is crucial for us, both for understanding our myth and for seeing romantic love in true perspective. The appearance of romantic love in the West began a momentous chapter in this cosmic drama of evolution. Romantic love is the mask behind which a powerful array of new possibility hides, waiting to be integrated into consciousness. But what has begun as a huge collective surge of psychic energy must be perfected at the individual level. It is always the role of individuals to complete the task, to bring the divine process to fruition within the microcosm of our own souls. It is up to us as individuals to take this raw unconscious energy of romantic love, this confusing array of impulses and possibilities, and transform it into awareness and relatedness. Every great myth is the symbolic record of such a stage of growth in the life of a people. This explains why these powerful stories capture us so completely and go so deep in our feelings. Tristan and Iseult is a symbolic blueprint of our Western psyche at a critical turning point in our psychological development. It shows us the conflict and illusions, but also the potentialities inherent in the situation. Now we are going to look at this high tale of love and death. From time to time in our story, we will pause to learn to read the symbolic language of the blueprint and to learn how to receive the wisdom that this myth offers us.